My wife, Diana, is a long-legged, green-eyed blonde. I am a more modest-looking, tall, blue-eyed, brown-haired man with a scar from a mine fragment on my left cheek. We are 34 years old and have been together for 11 years. We have 2 children, boys 10 and 8 years old. I work in a jewelry salon as an expert. I evaluate and examine the authenticity of antique jewelry. My wife works in a beauty salon, manicure, pedicure, haircut. She really likes her job. Although she has a higher education, she graduated from the University of Technology, specializing in refrigerators, equipment installation. She graduated, but did not work a single day. Immediately after university, she took a makeup course, and a friend took her to a salon. A lot of clients and customers, useful connections. In terms of intimacy, we were fine too. I thought my woman was happy with that sweet side of family life, always and everywhere. I bravely went along with any experiments and suggestions from my wife. All this was until recently. 6 months ago, my wife's mother fell ill. Diana threw everything she had into helping her. Frequent nightly wanderings at the bedside of the suffering mother-in-law had a negative effect on our family relations. No. Outwardly, everything was the same, my wife's soft, affectionately weary wall in denying me intimacy. But you understand, I'm so exhausted at work and at mom's. Wait, love, not now. And a soft caress on my cheek. Mom continued to be sick, and my wife visited her more and more often. And at some point she began to spend more time with her mother than with her husband and her own children. Daughter love, that's my mom. I am by nature not jealous. Diana did not give me any reason to be jealous. Although we live in a big city, you can't hide it. Sooner or later everything comes out. But as they say, the wife is above suspicion. If there had been something, I would have known. What kind of an arrogant idiot was I? It is now that I realize that adultery is inherent in the very nature of women. That most women's lives are dominated by emotions and passions. Throwing themselves into this love maelstrom, they forget about everything, about their husband, about children, about their conscience. That fateful day did not go well from the very morning. When I arrived at work, I remembered that I had not turned off the light in the bathroom. It is unlikely that some kind of problem will happen, but still decided to call home to my wife and ask her to check. But there was no answer on either my home or cell phone. I was about to go home when I got a call from a customer. Could you come up to my house and look at one thing? I was offered to look at an antique platinum ring from the mid-19th century. But the owner had doubts about its authenticity. I'll pay well for a consultation. The man who spoke possessed the magical, enveloping baritone that makes our gender partners swoon so much. Mezentsev, a familiar last name. And then I remembered, a wealthy patron of the arts. At home in summer and in Spain in winter. Owner of several newspapers and a share in the oil business. Probably decided to invest in antiques. Well, if you have money, then we're coming to you. We agreed on everything and made an appointment. I called my wife's number again, to no avail. Then I called the salon. The gracious girl sweetly informed me that Diane would not be at work today, as she had taken 3 days off. Mezentsev's dwelling was in an elite cottage community 30 kilometers from the city. His mansion reeked of big money 100 miles away. Walking along the path, paved with tiles, I pushed the heavy front door. The owner, a flamboyant, well-groomed playboy of about 45, met me at the threshold. His whole appearance indicated that he was doing me a great favor, breathing the same air as me. We climbed the marble staircase and found ourselves in a hallway with several doors. Behind one was an office. Beyond the others seemed to be bedrooms. We had barely exchanged a few words when the telephone rang. He got off the phone and then turned to me. He said he still had a salesman to come by. I'll go down and meet the salesman. Cognac, whiskey, help yourself. Mezentsev began to go down the stairs. I dialed my wife again. Where had she disappeared to? I was beginning to get nervous. Again there were long ringing tones, and suddenly a familiar tune began to play. I did not realize at first that it was my wife's phone. I went out into the hall. The sound came from a nearby room, and I cautiously opened the door. There was a large unmade bed in the middle of the room. A plain phone with a glowing screen lay on the side of the mat. Apparently it had fallen by accident. For a few seconds, I stood there like a dumbfounded man, not knowing what to think or do. My heart pounded in my throat, occasionally falling into my stomach. I leaned over and picked up my phone. On the burning screen, I saw my face and the signature, Beloved. There was no doubt, it was Diane's phone. I disconnected the phone and put it in my pocket. I looked up and looked at the bed. A part of the pink bra was sticking out from under the pillow. I pulled it gently, and I had my wife's bra in my hands. The one from the set Diana and I had bought a month ago. I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket and quickly returned to the office. A few minutes later, the owner came in, accompanied by a doll type. He introduced us to each other. The guest did not hesitate, took out an antique new case and handed it to me. I was afraid of one thing, lest my hands should tremble. I opened the lid with all my strength, and then I saw a magnificent ancient ring with a ruby. I scrutinized it in the magnifying glass for a few minutes, then held it up to the lamp. I looked at the markings on the inside of the ring and the plane of light in the blood-red stone. There was no doubt, it really was an antique ring from about the middle of the 19th century, the work of an unknown Russian jeweler. I want to make a gift for the woman I loved, said the owner smugly. I silently wrote a report, gave it to Mezentsev, got my fee, and quickly retreated. I couldn't bear to be in this house. I wondered if Mezentsev knew that I was the husband of his mistress. That my Diana was his mistress, I had no doubt. God, what an effort it cost me to pretend calm. How I wanted to hit that pampered face. Blago army skills had not yet forgotten. I sat in the car for a long time and couldn't move. So that's whose bed Diana had spent her evenings and nights at for the last 6 months. And my mother-in-law had diligently covered up her daughter's antics. For a moment I felt desperate. But why was she doing this to me? Why? If I could, I would. I must try to pull myself together. Where to go? All right, I'm going home to close the matter. After a while, I pulled onto the highway and drove toward the hauntingly flickering lights of the big city from the commercials. I have no luck with women. Sooner or later they leave me. I was abandoned by my mother as a child, running off to a lover. Apparently, there was no place in her happy future for me. And now my wife, after 11 years of marriage, decided to change her life drastically, to start from scratch, so to speak. What is it about me that makes women not stay near me for a long time? My father never married again after my mother left. He loved me and was very afraid that my stepmother would not be able to replace my mother. No woman needs other people's children. And in general, a woman doesn't owe anyone anything. It is a man's duty to raise and support other people's children. That's how we lived. 2 men, abandoned by the woman they once loved, and then my father died, and I moved in with my grandparents. An orphan with a living mother. Women often rebuke men for being too cruel. Nonsense. A woman will stop at nothing in her pursuit of personal happiness. She will sweep away everything in her path, everything including their own children. A woman's cruelty far exceeds that of a man. Diana, what did she lack in love, tenderness, money, adrenaline? In all 11 years, I never once looked at another. Maybe she shouldn't have taken my love as a weakness. Assured herself I wasn't going anywhere. Maybe Diana never loved me. It's not like that. All these years we lived soul to soul. I'd have sensed falsity. I'd have felt it in my heart. I hadn't noticed any signs of my wife's infidelity until today. Everything was exactly as it had always been. It was this circumstance that tore at my heart the most. Stupid jerk. Diana had been cheating for 6 months. Self-indulgent roles in someone else's bed, pretending that everything was fine with us. Morning monologues, taking care of the kids, taking care of me. And everything ended up being a lie. I was reminded of the words of an emancipated and lady I know. A husband is a potential enemy. Do they really think that? And behave accordingly, as in bed with the enemy? The outcome for me was clear. I caught myself thinking that I didn't like associating with Diana. There was even a feeling of squeamishness, treasonous. The woman looks like an ashtray. It's like pure fiction. But you'd think someone was putting out their cigarette butts in it. And also, in the background of what had happened, I was a little too calm. Maybe later I would finally realize the horror of what had happened. In the meantime, I was in a kind of stupor. It was as if it wasn't happening to me, and I was just observing everything from the sidelines. When I got home, Diana wasn't there yet. I went into the kitchen, took a bottle of cognac out of the cabinet, and put it on the table. He took his time drinking. I decided to explain myself to my wife sober. Diana showed up after midnight. "Hello, darling." Mom, as usual, had health problems. I had to go to help. I wanted to call, but I lost my phone somewhere. I must have left it at my mom's place. Diana went about her usual routine, taking off her coat and boots in the hallway. Walking into the kitchen, she poked me on the cheek with what? "Oh, cognac. Will you pour me one? I'm so tired from the day. It's unbelievable." Of course, not every man can take it. This is such a burden. Work, children, husband, lover. I looked at Diane in silence. I wondered how she would get out of this situation. Would she admit adultery or play dumb to the end? My wife almost ran to the bathroom. It was clear that she had not been to her mother's house today. Strange, doesn't her lover have a bathroom? Was it a fetish or something? Or is it better to wash off your sins at home? Diana was saying something, but the noise of the water drowned out the words. Yeah, I didn't really care what she said anymore. I cared what I had to say. My wife came into the kitchen in a bathrobe, over her bare body and with a towel over her head. Smiling, I splashed some cognac into the glass. It even seemed for a moment that nothing had happened. Such an ordinary evening out of 1,000 like this, but only for a moment. "Diane, sit down, we need to talk." I tried my best to hold myself together. Have you noticed that conversations about cheating always start the same way? We need to talk. It doesn't matter who initiated it, husband or wife. The important thing is that it's time to explain ourselves. Diane looked at me surprised, but left the frying pan alone. "Shall we reschedule for tomorrow?" Somewhat tentatively she said and turned her gaze. I could tell she was guessing the subject and was trying to stall, but I was adamant. I asked if she had someone, to which my wife made a surprised face and began to huff. "Do you have a lover? How long have you been cheating on me?" I tried my best to speak calmly. My wife's indignation seemed to have no end in sight. She began to say that she had never thought of anyone but me. She was an insulted innocence herself. Good for you, she's got a good grip on the punch. Not a muscle in her face flinched. "Diana, don't break the comedy. I know everything, how much, with whom, and even where. By the way, you didn't find a phone number. Why don't we call Mother?" My wife was silent, gathering her thoughts. It's too bad to be so absent-minded. I put her phone on the kitchen table. I could see Diane's pupils dilate. She clamped her mouth shut with the palm of her hand. "Where did you get it?" Barely audible, she whispered. "I found it in your lover's bedroom at Mezinsev's." I mocked her openly. She began to make excuses. "Did you get it wrong?" "Yes, I was at his house, but it was for work. I was giving him a manicure." Diane was ready to burst into tears. So she knew exactly who she was talking about. In the bedroom, in his bed. Granted. And with her breasts, she must have been massaging him. Diana was already screaming back. She must have recovered from the surprise by now. I silently put the pink muggy bra on the table. Diane was silent, thinking of an excuse. I was hot. I changed into my robe and took off my bra at the same time. You know how your breasts sweat, especially in a bra. You men don't understand that. I laughed outright, though I wasn't laughing at all. Diana flinched as if she'd been struck. Apparently, she realized that the excuse wasn't working. "I love only you. I don't need anyone else. I don't know what you have in mind, but I'm telling the truth. We have 2 children. What lover? What treason?" Diana fell to her knees in front of me. Diana was already sobbing in her voice. She didn't hold back her emotions. She grabbed my palm and began to kiss it. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and there was so much love and tenderness in her voice that it was impossible not to forgive her. What can I say? Tears are heavy artillery. We men are emotionally weaker than women. I wanted to hug Diane, kiss her beloved eyes, stroke her hair, reassure her. Really, what treason? She was just at work. So what if she dropped her phone? It's no big deal. Not to mention the bra. What's the big deal? I mean, she's so honest with me. Yes, I would have forgiven if it were not well known to me an antique platinum ring with a blood-red ruby instead of a wedding ring on the ring finger of her right hand. I sat and listened to Diana's heartbreaking lamentations, noting to myself that their tone had changed somewhat. The hysterical notes in her voice were gone. It even seemed to me that my wife began to calm down. I wondered what it was. Diana took my silence as a willingness to reconcile, or felt that she was able to convince me of her fidelity. It has long been known that women consider a man a special kind of upright, which they study closely, trying to nourish him and teach him to eat from the hand. The most important thing here is that he does not bite off his fingers, along with a piece of sugar. Well, I'm being ironic now. At the time, I was sitting there like a dumbfounded man. I was just beginning to get the whole sense of what was going on. Diana finally stopped talking and looked at me silently through her tears, probably expecting me to rush into her arms. Really, what else would you expect from a jerk whose wife had been out with him for almost 6 months, and he hadn't even supposed it? Diane made an attempt to hug me, but I pulled away. "Where did you get that ring?" I took the ring by her right hand. She looked at me perplexed and her gaze betrayed. "Well, yes, that one with the ruby. A friend suggested I buy it, so I took it to try it on, to see if it suited me or not." Diana, already realizing this was the end, was still desperately trying to hang on to her words, but she wasn't doing well. "That's enough. I think you'd better go now, especially since you have somewhere to go. I'll file for divorce myself. What about the kids? We'll decide tomorrow." I stood up. It was time to end the show. My wife somehow immediately cheated and did not stop sobbing. She went to get dressed. Several times she tried to talk to me, but I kept silent. At the door she turned to me, trying to say something, but I silently closed the door behind her. When you love, you don't need anyone else. No one at all. And if there's someone else besides the person you love, then we're all over. So that's the story. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss a new story.